Hi, this is David Rizzo from Rogers Gardens. Today we're going to talk about how to grow and cultivate strawberries. So when you're growing your strawberries, you want to find an area that's full sun, so 6 to 8 hours of full sun, because one thing to remember with strawberries, they're day length sensitive. And then when you go into the soil is important too, because strawberries like really good drainage. So when you're dealing with especially heavy clay, I'll use a planting mix that has a little bit of sand in it because I want to break that clay up because they need good drainage. Now on the other hand, if you're in a more of a sandier soil, then you'll use more of a compost that's going to hold more water. So in heavy clay, I'm just using a general planting mix that has more sand. And then in sandier soil, I might use a compost like Malibu compost. I might use more of the worm castings to get it to hold more of that water. And when growing strawberries in a container, there's many different container sizes. You can do hanging baskets, you can do terracotta, you can do all of them. But one thing I like to do, some people put them in strawberry pots, but one thing I like to do is I like more of the open containers. I'll take about a 17-inch pot and I'll put them about 4 to 6 inches apart. So that way they'll really be able to grow and expand, because strawberries don't get really big, but they get bushy, usually 10 to 12 inches wide and 10 to 12 inches tall. So they're very bushy plants. And one key thing to remember when using containers, use a really good potting soil. So I like a really well-draining potting soil. I tend to use Malibu potting soil a lot because I have nutrients in it, I have worm castings, I have compost, but then I have a lot of sand and perlite in it that helps that excess of water drain. So that's very important. So size a container, but good potting soil that drains. And then you can fertilize them a little bit more in containers. Sometimes I will feed them once a month during the growing season. When fertilizing your strawberries, I tend to use the organic fertilizers because I like more of a natural fertilizer that breaks down. So the types of fertilizers and in the ground and containers. So the first one I'm going to talk about is the all-purpose. So I like the all-purpose. This will work for anything, but strawberries are heavy feeders. So in the ground, I'll feed every 6 to 8 weeks, in pots about every 4 weeks. And I like this one because it's a good high calcium fertilizer. It's a 462. So all-purpose down to earth. This is a good one. If you want to get your soil, and this next one is more for in the ground because it has more mycorrhizae and natural fungus, beneficial fungus. This is BioAlive. So BioAlive or Bio's Live, this is a good one for the ground. So very good to fertilize. Same thing, about every 6 to 8 weeks and maybe every 4 weeks in a container. And the next one I use, if your soil is very alkaline, so if you're in the deserts, because strawberries need a little acidity, they don't have to be really acidic, but you can use a cottonseed meal, and this will help acidify the ground if you're in a very desert area, or if it's more alkaline. With these fertilizers, I always broadcast around the plant. Work it in really good. Work the fertilizer about 2 to 3 inches down in the soil around them, and then water really good afterward. Strawberries fall into 2 categories. So the first category are your June bearing. And your June bearing, they will bear early. So Sequoia is a really good June bearer. So this is the one that's going to produce in about June. So that's one. So as we go into the lengthening days of spring and summer, there's another category, and those are your everbearing types. So the everbearing types are going to be your bigger, larger strawberries, and they usually bear more into summer, like July, August, and even as late as August or September. So these fall into Chandler. Chandler is a really good one. This one, even though it's labeled as a June bearer, it really acts more like an everbearing. So I really consider it more of an everbearing. This one is Ozark Beauty. Another really good everbearing type, like this one. A really good one too is called San Andreas. So San Andreas is a really large bearing strawberry. You have the 1 gallon Albions. Those are really good. There's another one that I didn't grab called Seascape. So Seascape is one of my favorite varieties because it's such a strong producer. And the key with a lot of the large strawberries, to get the sweetness out of them, always let them ripen on the vine. And when planting bare root strawberries, you want to go more in the end of winter. So usually about January, February to plant the bare roots. Because one thing that's important with the bare roots, you have to have enough rain, so that gets them established, because they really are, like the name, bare roots. So this is one of my varieties of bare roots called Seascapes, and I love Seascape because this is an everbearing. And so these are the little bare roots right here. See, so they're just field grown, and then they're just roots, and you would just plant them. You plant them, you always spread the roots out a little bit and flatten them out. And the biggest difference when you're planting between the rooted and the bare roots, see, rooted strawberries have been growing in this pot for maybe a couple months, and so they're ready to go. They can take warmer conditions better, where the bare roots, there's a short window that you want to put them in late winter. So January and February for planting the bare roots, because they get the rain and they get established better with more water. When growing strawberries, you're going to deal with a few different types of pests, but the two major pests that you'll see are snails, slugs, and then pill bugs. And so I always use an organic bait. I like one that's made of iron, so Sluggo is a good one for snails and slugs. So I'll put this down, especially if you start to see holes in the fruit, because they'll bore little tiny holes in the fruit, and sometimes they'll eat the leaves. So what I'll usually do with this, I'll sprinkle it around the plants every 2 to 3 weeks. And that's regular Sluggo. Now, dealing with pill bugs, you're going to use Sluggo Plus. So this works good for pill bugs if you have a problem with the little sow bugs or pill bugs. When watering strawberries, strawberries like consistent regular water. And so in the ground watering, it really depends on your soil, because it's going to be different. So if you're in heavier clay, if you're in sand, but I always tell people, check the soil with your finger. Dig down 2-3 inches. If it's dry water, if it's wet, wait. But as it gets warmer, you're going to be watering more frequently. And then in containers, always look at where you have it, because if it's a really hot, sunny location, you might be watering them a few times a week, but always check the water instead of going on a regular schedule. Just be consistent and water them even. This is David Rizzo with Rogers Gardens. Thank you for joining me today, and don't forget to follow us on Instagram and Facebook, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. And then for more information, check us out on our website.